We're going to go ahead and salt our pasta water right now. When doing this, it's always important to taste your water and make sure it's salty enough. Once our water has hit a rapid boil, we're going to go ahead and add in our noodles. Since we're going to be finishing this dish off in the oven, we're only going to par cook our noodles. When par cooking a noodle, just cook it for about half of the average cook time. For these noodles, it was 8 minutes, so we cook each batch for 4 minutes. We're going to be using 4 different cheeses today. The first cheese is going to be a pound of cheddar cheese. Next we have a half pound of Havarti, a little less than a half pound of Gruyere, and 3/4 of a pound of some smoked Gouda cheese. After thankfully being able to track down 3 different shredders, I have enlisted the help of friends and co-producers to help me shred up this cheese. This turned out to be quite the process, but finally we have all of our cheeses shredded. We have our pound of cheddar cheese, our half pound of Havarti, 3/4 of a pound of Gouda, and finally our half pound of Gruyere cheese. Next up we have 3 pounds of bacon, which we are going to cut into 1-inch segments. Once our bacon is all cut up, we are adding it to our pot and starting to cook it. Here on Spicy in Seattle, we like to make special note of sanitizing our surfaces and utensils. If not handled properly, cross-contamination can become disastrous in the kitchen. We want to make sure we give our bacon a good stir and shake to make sure that it does not stick to the bottom of our pot. Next up, we are slicing up 2 onions into a medium dice and adding it into our mixture. We are cooking our onions now to let them sweat out any excess moisture before we finally add them to our smaccaroni and cheese dish. I hope you guys have by now realized this is going to be an unhealthy dish today. In case you have not, here's a slow-mo drop of a full cube of butter. This butter is being employed to make our traditional roux sauce. A traditional roux is 50% butter, 50% flour by weight. When making this, you want to make sure you add your flour in very slowly to prevent clumping. Normally we would use a whisk, but we didn't want to scratch our pot today, so we went with a wooden spoon instead. We want to add the remaining of our flour very slowly and continuously stirring. Our final roux should look almost like the consistency of wet sand. Next, we are going to create our bechamel sauce. We do this by adding cold whole milk to the hot roux. If you're using a cold roux, then you want to use hot milk. We are adding our milk half cup by half cup very slowly. If we have done the concurrent steps correctly, then our bechamel sauce should not thin until we add a few more cups. It should remain at the same viscosity of the wet sand roux. We now have our bechamel to the correct consistency and are also able to realize just how hard it is to get a nice camera angle without spilling all of our sauce. Now we are adding our cheddar cheese. We are only using about 3/4 of it and are reserving the rest of it for later. We want to make sure that we stir as we add to fully incorporate and melt the cheese. Once we feel our cheese is added and is part of a homogeneous cheese bechamel mixture, we are ready for the next cheese. Next up is our 3/4 pound of our smoked Gouda. Mixing it continuously, we next add our Havarti, and finally our Gruyere. We want to continue to stir this cheese bechamel mixture until all of the cheese is melted. We add a splash more of milk here to loosen up the mixture. We are finally able to see our hard work pay off with our cascading cheese creation. The next step is to add in our cooked bacon and onion mixture to our cheese bechamel sauce. After incorporating it, we want to give it a nice stir and make sure it is all throughout our sauce. Employing the help of our friend Mauricio again today, we are now adding our cheese bechamel, onion, and bacon mixture into our noodles. We want to make sure that we scrape down the sides of our bowls to ensure that we have every last bit of that cheesy gooey goodness. We are giving our noodles a good pass-through to make sure that they are evenly coated before they hit the pans and then off to the oven. We have now pulled out 2 Pyrex non-stick glasses, which we are going to transfer our noodle and cheese bechamel mixture into. After adding our mixture into the Pyrex glasses, we are going to layer on our reserved cheddar cheese before placing them into a preheated oven at 425 degrees. We want to place the 2 dishes in for about 20 minutes or until the top of our dishes are nice and golden brown like so. This dish was a little bit of work, but it's definitely worth it after you take that first bite.